this platform of AfriPal, where you're bringing academics, pra-academics, practitioners, members of parliament, the community, the media, and all those that are interested in having parliament and how it works better, is a very good initiative. The good thing is that we are part of a global community.
Yes.
This is going on everywhere else. And I think that it's also African in a way, because if you trace legislation, there was a lot of legislation in African nation states,
yes,
even before colonialism. So it's not necessarily a Western concept, but we are now at a place where we have to combine both values and appreciate what works. And this makes me very excited when I know that in a few months, weeks or so, we shall be having an assemblage of different people with different perspectives, showcasing different points of excellence of parliamentary work.
Greetings. Welcome again to this third episode of the AfriPal Dialogues. And today we delve more into what we think parliaments should be and what they should look like in the future. Today we'll be talking about professionalism and parliaments. What do we think? Should parliaments be professional? Should they have some professional standards under which they should operate? And to discuss that with me is Professor Gerald Kageja, who is one of the brains behind the AfriPal 2025, and he'll be telling us more about professionalism and parliaments. Professor Kageja, welcome to AfriPal Dialogue.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Thanks for hosting me.
Pleasure. It's good to have you, and we've traveled quite a bit.
Sure.
When it comes to the preparations for the AfriPal 2025. Coming up in June.
And I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. So I know come June, there are certain conversations that we'd want to have concerning parliaments and legislation. But one of those aspects that looms is the aspect of professionalism. When you talk about professionalism, some people will think, is this something that really parliament should consider, or should we leave it to the business world and to the private world? What do you think about it?
Well, being a professional has very many connotations, but many people, when they think about a professional, they think about an accountant, an engineer, and so forth. But there are critical things that also apply to parliamentarians or people who work in parliament. The first thing about a professional is a code of conduct, behavior, etiquette. We've seen people, being taekwondo experts in parliamentary plenaries. That's not space for showing how good you are at boxing each other or not allowing the force of the debate argument to prevail, but demonstrating inability to restrain yourself. So code of conduct, behavior, value system. The other one is about knowledge. A profession is about exclusive knowledge. So knowledge has different boundaries, but you don't need to be having a PhD or a master's in legislative studies. But if you've chosen to be a member of parliament or to work with parliament, then you should know the foundations of parliament, the behavior of parliament, the procedures of parliament, the processes in parliament. And it's very sometimes frustrating when you are watching members of parliament display a certain level of ignorance that is not expected of them. And given that an average parliamentarian in Uganda has a master's degree, and maybe has worked before, it's very disappointing that sometimes the display of knowledge, the depth of knowledge is very wanting. The other aspect about professionalism is the idea of self-regulation. That's why you hear Uganda Law Society, or an engineers group, and so forth. So it's helpful that members of parliament would also consider have a way of regulating themselves other than the procedures of disciplining themselves and so forth, even self-regulation. And this is the role that political parties play in a parliamentary democracy, which is running on a multi-party dispensation, one would expect that parliamentary caucuses and especially party-based caucuses would be reflecting on how to regulate themselves. But we've seen a number of times disagreements within political parties, disagreement within caucuses becoming issues of public concern, and people trying to show how independent they are and so forth.
Yeah.
The other aspect about professionalism is recognition by the state. Yes, parliamentarians are recognized by the state, and maybe on that one there's a little bit of a score. Then the last one is also about exclusion and inclusion. With due respect, a number of parliaments in Africa, it has been a theater where the minimum requirements are such that many nothing can be something big. So you find that, like in Uganda, minimum academic qualification is A level. And if we are talking about universal secondary education, universal primary education, very many people have passed that. Maybe we need an extra criterion beyond the academic qualifications. Well, I don't need to have a degree in order to be a parliamentarian, fine. But maybe I should be able to pass some due diligence. I should be able to have some level of moral competence and so forth. So yes, professionalism for members of parliament has all those nuances because people become more ethical, more accountable, more professional in conduct, more predictable, more structured in the way they do things, more rule following, and less playing politics in parliament but doing parliamentary work.
Yeah.
And also for those who are not members of parliament but are parliamentary staff, it's very critical that the parliamentary studies institutes or research desks improved more than they are now. Because when you look around the region, maybe Kenya, in West Africa, maybe Ghana, they have very strong research and strong induction training orientation courses. But other than that, also they should be technically competent in their own areas. I was recently doing a capacity needs assessment for Ugandan accountability committees, and you'd find that the support staff, for example, who should do financial analysis, are social scientists.
Yeah.
Because somebody's appointed a researcher and then you're expected to research on everything, legal issues, financial issues, and so forth. So there's also need for sector-specific or discipline-specific professionals to support parliament and parliamentary work, right?
Yeah. So it's very important that you mentioned the idea about qualification, sector-specific requirements or skills that are needed for parliamentary technical staff. But then also that gets me to think about parliamentarians themselves. Of course, the whole aspect of qualifications in terms of academic qualifications may not necessarily be important because there are countries where, for example, in Uganda, we have an academic qualification, but again, members of parliament actually supersede that one. And then we have countries where they don't actually have a qualification, an academic qualification for one to be a member of parliament. But then that also borders on the question of whether being a parliamentarian in this day and age is a job or a service to community. And I think that, of course, in the face of capitalism and financial, the financial or commercialization of politics gets a bit confused. So how does that, interplay? How does that dynamic come in to affect the professionalism of parliaments? And in a way, how can we ensure that, self-interest, for instance, does not infuse itself into one's service, as a parliamentarian, as a representative of your constituents? Because I get a feeling that as we move on and as parliaments get transformed, especially in this liberal era, there's a bit of that mix-up that tends to taint the institution.
I think we are in a flux. Globally, there is a decline in democracy.
Yeah.
There is a democratic recession. And I think that it is reflecting itself in very many ways. But one of them is that perception, the predisposition. Because what makes a parliamentarian ordinarily should be the predisposition. Why are you going there to serve? You are a representative in two ways. You are representing those who are like you, their interests, their desires, aspirations, but you are also representing those who are not like you, as long as the common good is achieved. But commercialization of politics has actually made parliamentarism also a commodity. Some people are saying it's a business, it's an investment. You hear someone saying, I've put in so much money, I want so much money out. Even suspecting that there could be out there people who have big interests that now will start hiring parliamentarians and investing. Gerald, you want go, you can speak, go be a parliamentarian. Yes. But when taxes are being debated, when this is being debated, so with capitalism, you can't take anything for granted. So there's that decline, and also it has been expressed by the leadership of parliament. Previous speakers and the current leadership in parliament has expressed disappointment with the caliber and the quality of parliamentarians.
Yes.
So one way is that when I speak with a number of parliamentarians, their induction and orientation is more ritualistic and symbolic.
Yes.
Maybe they need like a whole month of being taken through other than the procedures and rules and so forth. But the conceptualization, what is parliamentary democracy? What's parliamentary sovereignty? What does it mean to be an arm of government? What does it mean to serve as a legislator? Why is it that people are despising everything else and we give premium to constituency services, having an ambulance, building a borehole? Are you the state? No.
No.
Are you the executive? No. So why are we responding to the population pressure?
Yes.
Or is it time to redefine democracy? But partly it's also what members of parliament promise the population. And that's why there's a high attrition rate.
Yeah.
From 60 to over 80% most of the previous parliamentary sessions. It's because the population feels that they're not getting what they expect from the parliamentarians. The question of individual interests. I think we have now people who have chosen to be careerists as parliamentarians, and also people leaving school and they think that being a member of parliament is a job, an occupation.
Yes.
And not an opportunity to serve. So I think there could be some incentives that have been misunderstood. One way is to reconfigure the remuneration and compensation of parliamentary work so that people feel the sacrifice of servanthood, and then those who have the passion and the desire to legislate are given the opportunity to do so. And then in a way, if it becomes a disincentive, especially a financial disincentive, those who are pursuing personal interest, especially aggrandizement and expectation of getting so rich. I've been moving in a number of constituencies, including where I come from. The amount of money that is already being spent in Uganda for people who are aspiring to become parliamentarians is astonishing. It's amazing, and you wonder why wouldn't they become philanthropists and just sit down and donate things instead of
fundraise?
Causes, yeah. In one of my constituencies, the other day I was listening to the member of parliament saying, look here, I'm going to give you mama kits, I'm going to give you an ambulance, and please baptize your children after me. So I found it also degrading and disgusting. So it's not all gloom, but we have also had very few, very well-known and respected parliamentarians have a desire to return. Maybe it's high time we also think of a bicameral parliament, where we're also reducing the number of representatives and having less senators, so that the combination of both houses is still, in terms of numbers, less than what we have, like in Uganda and many other parliaments. Maybe one other thing, I've noticed that in some countries, the role of political parties own politicians is strong. I'll give an example of Rwanda. Members of parliament, before they express themselves on the floor, they have to share their views before their party leaders. Members of cabinet, before they take policies to cabinet, they really have to give presentations and get approvals. So I find that the role of political parties in Uganda has been reduced to electoral machines instead of using them as vehicles for political recruitment, for political development, for political negotiation, for aggregation of interest. And this is not only a Ugandan story. It has been replicated all over the continent. And I think it's high time that we look at a parliament of the future that is more dynamic, more responsive, more sensitive, and respected.
I think now when you talk about political parties and their role in parliament, and I think I agree with you, it's evolved over time from what the opposition is supposed to actually be. But then there's also the aspect of ideology and how ideology governs one's political actions. And I don't know how that in a way functions in many political parties. And I think that also ties back into when you talk about the aspect of servanthood versus careerism, like taking your parliamentarism as a career, and political parties in terms of, because you see situations where people switch from one party to the other, just like you're switching from one house to the other based on the amenities that the other house, provides. But when you talk about the aspect of ideology, it seems to be lacking. And I wonder if that is what is actually missing when it comes to also the aspect of professionalism and parliaments and parliamentarians, that lack of thought, of that belief that governs what you want to do, that governs your actions and governs, how you react to certain situations. And I think the missing link in that also could be an effect, or an impact on the trust, first of all, that the public, for example, puts on parliamentarians per se, but then also tying into the aspect of perception. What is the public's perception now of parliamentarians if we seem to see some deficiency among parliamentarians? And if they are a representation of the people, then what does that say about the people they represent, for instance?
Yeah, those are very provoking thoughts, but the intimacy and affinity of many politicians to their political parties is limited, if available at all. Many of them actually are not having, because you see, one of the things that should bind people together in a political party is aggregation of interests and ideas. And you either contribute ideas or money or participation. Many people instead expect than provide.
Yeah.
So there's that reverse of expectations of roles. Two, if you did an anatomy of any political party in most African countries, they wouldn't cease even to be called political parties. Maybe that's why, for example, in a country like Uganda, people were clever. In one of the political parties, the ruling party, they call themselves an organization.
Yes.
So that, don't judge us as a political party. For us, we are...
And it's easy to switch from one to the other.
Either to be anything or and nothing. Then also, ideologically, many of them have no ideology at all. They just have particular interests that are even not long-term, but are of a short-term nature, with a very high expiry date and with little resonance with the population. So that also undermines. So there are very few parliamentarians, in my view, in Africa who are pursuing ideology. And most new political parties have also failed to have a footing. When we were coming towards independence, there was a lot of rallying for an Africanism, liberation, and so forth. Then when that one was over, we had a number of liberation movements gravitating into political parties, and then they have this high sense of entitlement and exclusive ideological conceptions about self and so forth. And then this whole divide of, you can say, global left-right many political parties are preferring to say they are pragmatic, whatever that means, which in my view is they are just being opportunistic.
Yes.
They go with what happens. And also they have lost the idea that political parties are not necessarily being in power or being in waiting to have power. You can have a political party to pursue a particular cause.
Yep.
You can have a political party to groom leaders. You can have political parties to do policy influencing and so forth. So I think that also as a continent, we are doing a disservice to multipartyism, and we are developing politicians that have a deficiency of appreciation of multi-party politics. And those who excel, we are not having them as champions and as heroes to be glorified and imitated.
Yes.
Instead, they are being relegated and despised. Part of it is us in the academia. I think we've paid minimal attention to parliamentary and legislative studies. And I think it's high time that as a continent, as countries, we see how also to increase our understanding, our research, our appreciation of what works and gets the centers of excellence, because there are some also very good things that are happening in appropriation, in oversight, in legislation, in our parliaments. But the problem is that our expectations are higher because the population is more demanding, it's more educated, it's more exposed, and the comparative aspect is great.
And I think when you talk about the fact that now parliamentarians are dealing with a population that's more exposed, and especially in the age of digitalization and AI, there's a lot, and now that parliament is also digitized, there's a lot that the public has access to that they didn't have before, so they can be able to question and see the loopholes that happen in parliament, or see the shortfalls of their representatives. I wonder if in many ways that, and then also the political environment, makes it hard for parliaments to actually be professional or to act in any professional kind of manner. Take, for instance, the aspect of absenteeism that you mentioned. I mean, given the different struggles that members of parliament go through, right from campaigns, and now when they're in parliament, and then of course when they're in parliament, they're now thinking about after what is going to happen. Am I going to still come back as a member of parliament? And if I don't, then what will happen to me, after this? I wonder if those intricacies in a way have an impact on parliament, its professionalism as an institution. And are there some things that could be borrowed, for instance, from like the private sector that could be adopted by parliament to try and structure it in ways that parliament remains relevant, responsive, but then also keeps up with the times that they're living in?
Yeah, one of them is performance management, but you've noticed that any attempts to check the performance of parliamentarians is faced with a lot of resistance. You've heard about the balance scorecard, seen, and so forth. So I think that it's high time that we should consider some minimum way of measuring the performance of members of parliament other than the political accountability, which comes every 5 years at voting, but at managerial level, at practice level, and there are some few indicators that can be used. And this can also be done at party level. The other one is parliament has also been largely affected by showbiz, both in terms of their work. I'll just say 2 examples. A number of accountability committees across the continent have been complaining about the dominance of the leadership. When agencies, for example, appear, then the leader, instead of moderating, he becomes the prosecutor, he becomes the judge, he becomes the... And then also, so basically playing to the gallery. And then also you have the reverse, those who appear for oversight to be held accountable and so forth. they fear more the camera than the substantive issues that are being raised.
Yes.
So, for example, someone was telling me in one of the countries in the region that when accounting officers appear before an accountability committee and they are grilled before the camera, they really feel that they have been judged. But even if they are sent to police to go and make statements and even go through the prosecution process, they are like, that one is less publicized.
Yes.
And that shows us that the essence, the core, is about the value system. So if there is a perceived decay in the value system, the political values also affect the political sociology, the behavior, the actions, the thinking, the mental programming. And I think we have some work to do there.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. It's a good thing that you mentioned something about the value system. And I like saying this thing that, I mean, we breed ourselves, like we breed the kind of leaders that we see in society. So when we point fingers, it's also important to look at ourselves and ask ourselves, what are we allowing? What are we condoning? Because if we're condoning that, then we cannot blame them. We need to look at ourselves and question our value systems. Then that in reverse will lead us to what we're exactly looking for. We'll take a short break right now and we'll be back.
Welcome to the Parliament Performance Tracker platform, a portal designed to empower Ugandan citizens with valuable insights into their parliament's performance and financial landscape. Some of the key highlights of this platform include the Parliament Legislators Report Card. Here, you find comprehensive information on the members of the Ugandan Parliament, from contact details and their biographies to their legislative performance, including bills sponsored, bill participation, term count, and the number of parliamentary committees they sit on. This section provides a transparent view on each legislator's contributions and activities. The Finance Tracker. This consists of two powerful tools, the Budget Tracker and the Debt Tracker. The Budget Tracker displays the current budget allocations of Uganda, allowing you to track how public resources are distributed across various sectors. But that's not all. There is also the Budget Simulator tool, enabling you to actively participate in the budgeting process by simulating your preferred resource allocations. While the Debt Tracker provides insights into Uganda's national debt standing, you will discover key metrics such as the debt per citizen, GDP per capita, and per capita income, along with the sources of these loans. Stay informed about Uganda's financial health and the implications for future generations. Insights. This is a platform where you can gain valuable knowledge about parliament-related topics. Simply enter your queries and our system will fetch relevant articles and also provide AI-generated summaries, offering you a deeper understanding of the issues that matter to you. With its comprehensive tools, staying informed about Uganda's parliament and financial landscape has never been easier. Whether you're curious about your representative's performance, want to understand the budget allocations, or seek insights on parliament-related topics, this platform has you covered. Empower yourself with data and take an active role in shaping Uganda's future. Parliament Watch. Your eye on Parliament.
Thank you and welcome back. So before we went into the break, there was the aspect of the value system. And, you know, I was basically questioning that we tend to point fingers at parliamentarians or our representatives and fault them for a lot of things without pointing the finger back at us and asking ourselves, but we are the ones who put them there. And we actually produced them. They come from us because they're supposed to be a representative of us. And I wonder if our value system as a society has essentially degraded to the extent that there are some things that are allowable, you know, right now. And you hear instances of where, you know, there are public, you know, quotes or comments about, well, but at least they stole the money, but they put it to something that was useful without putting into consideration, the ethics of that, because if something was meant for a particular purpose, why would you divert, that money? It's more like, well, the end means to an end, and the end, where there's a question of the means justifies, the end. But then you also mentioned something to do with the fact that academia seems to have neglected the whole area or subject matter of parliament and legislation, and we seem to have left it more to more or less a practitioner level. But then how that in one way, when it comes to the school system, falls back again into the whole value system, and how that in a way is translated into our everyday actions, operations, be it where you are, whether you're in public service, whether you're in the private world, that in a way says a lot about your character and your ethics, of course, back to the whole aspect of professionalism.
Yeah, our education system now is being changed, especially in Uganda, to become competence-based and so forth. But I think there's a lot of things that we need to pay attention to. There's been a lot of concern about the moral and ethical conduct of us Ugandans. And it's true, members of parliament or any other leaders reflect who we are, because they are representing us. And to represent people, it means you are like them in one way or the other. Because people usually prefer to have those who are like them.
Who understand them.
Who understand them, who respond to them, who are sensitive to them. So either the politicians are a reflection of who we are, or they are so skilled that they show us that they are like us when they are not.
Yeah.
But getting to the question of socialization, both at school and at home, I think there's a lot that needs to be done in appreciating parliamentary and legislative issues. Because not only at the national level, but even at subnational level,
yes,
we have left legislation to actually whoever and anyone. Because the subnational legislative entities, there are no restrictions on education. It's just about popularity.
Yes.
If I've been elected a councillor, then I'm a member of the local council, and therefore I can be a legislator.
Yes.
To the relationship between the lower legislation, subnational legislation, districts and so forth, with the national, that's also very dysfunctional. So it means that our whole architecture for legislation and parliamentary issues is immature. We need to develop it further. And that undermines parliamentary democracy. We have isolated cases of excellence. And one way is maybe we could have these people as heroes, as champions, as mentors, celebrate them and learn from them and benefit from them. And then spread what they stand for to benefit all the others. There has been what these days I consider Robin Hood politics, where people think that those that they have set as representatives, their role is to go to the capital, pick the share of the cake, and take it back home.
Yes.
Of course, literally, one would say politics, one way to define it is who gets what, how and when, and where, and so forth. But the question is how.
It's done. Yeah.
It's done. And Robin Hood was not known for getting things the right way.
The right way, yes.
So, but also we have legitimized some illegal, illegitimate, unethical ways of accumulating wealth. And also we have celebrated wealth as the ultimate goal for humanity. And sometimes I also get uncomfortable when I hear some countries say that their premise now is wealth creation, getting everybody wealthy. Human beings do not aspire to be wealthy, they aspire to be better. So instead of well-being,
yes,
which is increasing opportunities, becoming better, having better health, having better education, we are giving a lot of premium to wealthy being.
Yes.
Having more money, getting rich. Well, there's nothing wrong with getting rich, but I think that's not the ultimate goal for which the state was created. The state was created to improve the well-being of each and every citizen.
Yes.
And members of parliament, their role is to legislate, do oversight, to ensure that well-being, increasing of opportunities like jobs, improvement in welfare like medicine, like health and education is achieved.
Yes.
So I think also at national level, we are having a convoluted national philosophy on what it means to be better.
Yes.
And that's why, among other reasons, I think we have growth that is not transformational. Every other day, we are given all these figures. With due respect, I'm not an economist, but the population is asking, how does that translate
Yes.
into my
word.
affordability of services?
Yes.
How does that translate into availability of beds, of ICU beds?
Yes.
I've been having a patient for the last 5 days on the waiting list to be in a public ICU because the beds are 7 and they are full. So you are waiting either for someone to be better and leave or otherwise.
Yes.
Which, when we see projects for hospitals not providing that, then it raises a number of questions. So on the whole, I think that, yes, I agree, there is a decadence in morality, decadence in ethical competences, but also we have isolated instances of excellence, which we need to emulate, which we need to praise and extrapolate and rally around. We have a national values policy, but it's hardly in effect. As a nation, we don't know what national philosophy we have. We don't know whether we're a developmental state. We don't know whether we're a welfare state. We don't know whether we're a pure capitalist state, because some of us don't think that the private sector can develop the country.
Yes.
Or it can be concerned with certain public goods. So I think it's high time most African countries get out of the post-colonial hangover and focus on how do we be the next Africa? How do we be the next parliament? How do we be the next leaders? How do we make our people reach the destined land? Improved well-being, improved security, better livelihoods, better education, better values.
And I think you mentioned something about the what kind of state are we? You know, is it a welfare state? Is it a purely capitalistic state? And sometimes the arguments around corruption, for example, of course, grand corruption is very detrimental to citizens. But then there's also the aspect of petty corruption, which in a situation where there's a breakdown in the welfare state, it actually enables people to have access to services. Because if it's not there, then people would not have access to these services. Of course, it's a bit convoluted in a way because people somehow benefit, but again, the other side of the coin is a detriment to the citizens. But then back to the conversation on what then should we do as a people. Yes, parliamentarians need to be responsive to their citizens, but who are these citizens? What is the demographic? Like, what are their characteristics? Is it just the people they represent? But then who exactly do they represent? And who they represent has a variety. You know, it includes, you know, the business people in the informal sector, the formal sector, there's the academia, there's, of course, the other organizations they work with that help government, like civil society and NGOs and all these, you know, practitioners. And how do you think a collaboration with all these, for example, the people on the other scale, for instance, in terms of the researchers and academia, in avenues such as AfriPower, would be very important to furthering some of these conversations and, of course, leading to a more sustainable way in which parliaments can be transformed for the better?
In Uganda, at one time, there was an idea of moving the parliament to the people.
Yes.
It raised a lot of controversies. But I think that regardless of the merits and demerits of that particular exercise, the idea of engaging the public to appreciate the primary role of parliament is very critical. So when AfriPal comes in to mobilize both the community and the practitioners, the academia and the observers, it's high time that each one of us takes responsibility. And we don't blame each other for what's going wrong.
Yes.
Instead, we work together for each to bring what they can to make the situation better. If I'm a member of parliament, to demonstrate how a good parliamentarian can be. If I'm a parent, to show my children right from kindergarten and high school that if you want leadership, you don't buy your way out. You have to argue your case. You have to be good to people. You have to show that you care for them. You have to demonstrate that you are not easily compromised. You have a better sense of judgment. If I'm in the academia, then I should be able to reflect that public administration is not just about giving lip service on ABCDE, but also to show what works and how it can work well. And I want to say that we should shine now more attention to the legislature, because if you look at it even in terms of disciplines, you find the executive is highly served by people who have studied public policy, public administration, the judiciary, law, and but you find that the parliament as an arm of government is not as served. Media, we have so many media practitioners, but whom do we call parliamentary and legislative experts other than former members of parliament and parliamentary workers? So I think that we need to celebrate the idea of AfriPal, of increasing appreciation of parliament and looking at what can work and scale it up, what is not working and modify it. For example, in Uganda, members of parliament do a lot of work, but they claim they have no time. The scheduling I can just say that currently, many members of parliament are involved in the budgeting process, but at the same time they're making reports for their committees. So, and they are also worried about their next election. So I'm imagining if I'm a member of parliament, how do I manage that time? How do I manage that stress? How do I manage that situation? So this platform of AfriPal, where you're bringing academics, practitioners, members of parliament, the community, the media, and all those that are interested in having parliament and how it works better, is a very good initiative. The good thing is that we are part of a global community.
Yes.
This is going on everywhere else. And I think that it's also African in a way, because if you trace legislation, there was a lot of legislation in African nation states, even before colonialism. So it's not necessarily a Western concept, but we are now at a place where we have to combine both values and appreciate what works. And this makes me very excited when I know that in a few months, weeks or so, we shall be having an assemblage of different people with different perspectives, showcasing different points of excellence of parliamentary work, how people are trying to solve certain issues. An example, in Uganda, one of the things we are struggling with is monitoring and enforcing parliamentary decisions. At one point, even the Right Honorable Deputy Prime Minister said, "What can we do? Ours is only to talk."
Yes.
But the other day, I got to know that, for example, in Kenya, they have come up with a robust mechanism to both track and enforce some of the decisions that
Yes.
Parliament takes. So using that as an example for illustration, maybe there's something the Ugandan Parliament during the AfriPower opportunity will learn from the Kenyan Parliament. And I'm also sure that there are a number of things other parliaments will also learn from the Ugandan Parliament and so forth.
Yes.
So that learning exchange opportunity is grand, and we should take the most of it.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Kageja, for joining us on the AfriPower Dialogue. And just like you say, it presents an opportunity for learning. And I think without dialogue, it's impossible to achieve that. We all live in busy worlds in our own, cocoons, and we hardly find the time to come and talk about some of these things. And I think it's also important, the exchange is important from academia, practitioners, and parliamentarians. Yes, we interact with them in many other aspects, of life. Some of them are mainly policy oriented, maybe legislative oriented, and specific aspects of the legislation, but not in a broader sense. But I think having these conversations continuously helps bridge the gap, between academia and them. And we don't other ourselves within a system that we all are working to improve at the end of the day. Thank you for joining us again on the AfriPower Dialogues. And yes, we look forward to the AfriPower conference that will be taking place in Kampala, Uganda, from June 18th to the 20th. And please look at the website, visit our website and all our socials for more additional information. We look forward to seeing you there. Welcome. Thank you.